I started the recording, so let me start a stream for you as well. Okay. I'll give you a second to connect. First thing, I'm not sure all of you have this, so I will drop it into the chat. It's the assert auto ignore script, and it should um, make loading into your modules far easier. Basically, what it does is it skips all of the errors for you. For those of you who came prepared and you already have um, your Bannerlord module installed, the modding kit installed, please go ahead and start it up. If you have your own module, go with that. If you have the module for the Age of Men, let's use this one. Um, so yeah, the auto assert ignore script just closed all of these errors. Sometimes you will get much more. Sometimes you'll get just like a bunch, less than 10. It varies, and I can't say that I know exactly what causes more or less of them. Obviously, it's tied to all sorts of errors that you have, but sometimes it's just random. So we open the editor, pretty simple, and we will be greeted with this empty scene. So, couple of things that we want to do first is setting up our scene so we can start working with it. Let's start by opening another menu that we're missing. Every time we open up the editor, we need to add the atmosphere inspector. You can also create a layout for yourself by clicking the plus, and then you can save uh, your menus in whatever orientation that you like. For example, I have this saved. It's pretty simple. It's just the edit atmosphere inspector. So we have that enabled, and now we can look into generating terrain, which is the most important step, because without the generated terrain, we cannot start working on any scene, because no terrain means that we will crash when we try to save our scene. So let's actually familiarize ourselves with the uh, toolbar here. So we have um, the scene options, which is also available down here. You can put your name, add a comment. Usually what I do is I put my tag, and let's say this is for the Age of Men test scene. You can also play with stuff like the scene levels, the water, wind direction, strength, stuff like that. I will cover levels later on. Next, we have the um, select terrain. Here we generate our base terrain, which is sort of our sandbox. Um, we want every node to be 128 by 128. It basically gives us, basically the node dimension means um, the texture tiling that appears on the ground, how detailed it is, how many times is the texture repeated across each node. This also translates to the texture, but also translates to us working on the terrain itself, which is raising it, lowering it, pulling, whatever. So the higher the node dimension we chose, the more detailed we can be with our work. So we can create nicer slopes, basically make a more organic looking terrain. Still, why do we use only 128 by 128? That's the highest value that I find it to be stable. When you go to 256 or higher, you just created much larger risk um, for crashes. And when you work on a scene that sometimes can take you 10, 20, 30, 40, 100 hours, you do not want to take big risks that may mean that you either have to delete a large sum of your work just to redo it on a scale that works, or even worse, just lose everything because your scene got corrupted over something kind of silly. So we'll stick to 128 by 128. The single node size basically means how many meters is each node's size. So 100 meters, 100 square meters is the recommended value. You can make it smaller. There is no reason to make it smaller. You can make it larger if you want. I recommend staying at 100, but you can go to 110, 120. I wouldn't go much beyond that, just to be, again, to be safe. X and Y, that's the amount of nodes we are generating. The lowest amount you can is 1 by 1. The highest one is 16 by 16. So if we take 16 by 16 with a node size of 100, we have 1.6 kilometers, square kilometers scene. So let's start by generating the terrain now with those specifications. And we can use whatever template we want, but I'm going to use default, and we're going to do the terrain textures in a moment, the materials for it. All right. So we have 16 by 16, which is pretty big. Um, just for scale, we can go ahead and drop the Atom model. So you can see this is a model we use for scale to see how a player would feel in an environment. As you can see, it's really, really big. You can have huge armies running across a map this size. Now, when we create a map, we need to choose size based on the purpose of the map we're creating. So if we're creating an interior scene, um, and it's usually an enclosed building, we don't really use the terrain, might as well create a 1 by 1. Um, if we create a town, village, battle map, whatever, um, we can do anything between 9 by 9 and 16 by 16, um, just so we have enough space to build our main build, create some nature around it, and make sure that our uh, absolute border of the map are far enough so we don't just go on a horse, ride straight out, and then get to the edge and see stuff that we shouldn't see. Um, it's obviously something that if a player wants to try hard enough to break the immersion and go and see stuff that we don't want them to see, they will. There's no point in fighting that, but still, just to maintain the illusion, we're gonna do slightly larger scenes. Okay, so we have our terrain. We can do the terrain materials now. So the next tab after selecting terrain, we can go to terrain elevation. And I'm going to focus on that before the materials. Terrain elevation, pretty simple. We have um, rise, lower, smoothen, flatten. We work with the radius. We can. I'm not covering the specific buttons because they're quite intuitive. Most editing programs that work in 3D environment will use the same buttons. That's, for example, the WASD for movement, with shift making you move faster, kind of like running. Um, and changing the camera is the mouse, and right clicking will let you rotate in place. Right clicking with Alt lets you rotate it around the central point, and yeah, that's pretty much it for movement. Okay, so back to terrain elevation. So we have rise, quite simple. It's raising the ground. Lower, making it lower. Smoothen is just making everything smoother. Pretty simple. And we have the flatten tool, um, which is finally probably the most useful one out of all of them. We can choose a specific height, and then it will set everything to that specific height we chose. This can be very useful for multiple cases. It's something that you will discover once you do more and more work with the editor. Um, Slightly more advanced techniques. We have patterns. We have the height filter and slope filter. Basically, what they mean is the height filter. I can choose that I will only modify things between a certain height to another certain height, or with the slope filter, I will only modify parts that are between 0 and 40 degrees. So I will only modify slopes and not flat ground. It's just as an example. Um, and patterns, I'm going to show them at least. Those help us create a bit more variation with the ground. Basically, create more organic looking shapes rather than just everything being circles. Then, if you want to make everything just a bit more organic, we do a bit of smoothing, and we get those nicer uneven shapes. Flattening everything back to 0. Actually, I'm gonna do one more thing just to show, because this is something that I found very annoying early on, and then once you know how to fix it, it's very simple. So we see the ground. The further we go, it gets degraded, and usually it's not that bad, but you still um, don't want to see that in certain cases. So if we go back to our select terrain and terrain properties, we can change the LOD multiplier. And you can play with anything between 1 and 10, but 10 would give us terrain that just never degrades. So that's something that I usually do, and then based on the needs of the scene, I change that later to different values. Okay, let's flatten everything back down. Awesome. Okay, so the next thing is the paint terrain. We'll take the default layer and we'll apply a basic dirt texture. I'm going to do earth and have this one specific earth texture that I'm going to use, but I want to show you something just so you be familiar with it. When I work with textures, the editor knows automatically to choose the normal maps, the roughness, the specular, based on the names. So if there's a name dash D, which D stands for diffuse, it will automatically select everything else with the same name dash N dash S. Um, so if I take the ground earth texture right now, it does not bring in the normals and speculars and height map. But if I go with this one, now I do have the height, the specular, the normal map, and everything is slightly nicer now. Since this is the default layer, the basic layer that we're working with, we also need to choose the physics material. That's the only layer that we actually need to worry about the physics material for, because all of the other layers, while they do have that button available, it means nothing. At the end of the day, only the lowest layer is determining um, the material you walk on. What does it mean? When I'm in the scene and I walk around on a horse or by foot, um, you see small particles popping off the ground. So um, if I choose to do wood, there wouldn't be any particles. But if I take, for example, path, so I'm gonna get something that would look kind of like this because it's using that texture for the particles that are popping up. In addition to that, we will also have different sounds. So there's soil, path, mud, stone, metal, fabric. There's quite a few of them. So for the purpose of this tutorial for now, we're going to do path, and we're going to stick with this texture for now. The next thing we need to know is that although this texture is nice as it is, we also want to give it a bit more depth. Since we have normal maps and a height map, we can enable the parallax effect through the lighting, and that basically creates this uneven look to the texture. Obviously, I can go crazy, but then it really ruins everything, so we need to be a bit subtle. Let's say 0 0.2 is a decent spot to stay on. I'm going to change the camera speed, by the way, to 0 0.1 just to make it a bit easier for me to navigate. Um, Depending on what you do, if you work on smaller details and stuff, being on a lower camera speed is going to be very useful. But usually, staying on speed 1 should be more than enough. Okay, so we have our parallax lying effect. It's not really changing anything in terms of physical look. The ground is still flat. It's just an illusion. But that illusion really just helps a lot, making everything look a bit nicer. Next, we have the transparency effect. I'm gonna showcase this with another layer. So I just brought in some form of mud. Gonna be modifying this one again. Gonna play with the parallax, give it a bit of weight, and then I can show you the transparency effect. Once I have the transparency effect, it changes the way textures blend. So normally it blends like this, which is a smooth transition. And when I use the transparency height blend, there's no longer a smooth transition. It's harsh. It's 0 to 100 kind of deal. But now you get a blending that's based on the height map. This can be very nice when you do stuff like mud or when you do snow. I can change it to snow so you can see. Just gives a bit more natural buildup for certain materials. Just a bit of a variation in the in the layout of the materials that we're using. All right. The next thing after transparency effect, we can also modify the blending amount if you want, and the scale, but it's not as important. Okay. Next, we have the area map. Area map is basically playing a bit with the material colors and blending another texture into it. So um, we can do additive or multiply. It's something that you will play with once you get to editing yourself. So let's just make it a bit darker and maybe more neutral, less reddish looking. So there you go. But generally, I can play and create whatever I want with it. So if I was making uh, a desert scene, sometimes it's gonna be annoying like this. If I was creating a desert scene and it's yellowish in its base form, and some deserts are a bit more reddish and stuff, I can play around with the sand to create something that would fit nicer in different biomes. All right. We can also do blending other textures. Sometimes I like using the uh, footsteps ones, so I can blend them into sand or I can blend them into mud and not just use them for snow. Uh, but I'm not going to go too deeply into all of the details for creating something like this. But you'll need to play, multiply, additive, something. You'll see what works, and you should also play with the size scale just to get a better feel. But yeah, you can mix in whatever textures you want. Can help a bit creating um breaking monotony or uh, adding a bit more to the texture. Whatever you need, um, you can blend them this way. All right. Next, after the area map, we have rotation, which is pretty simple. I only use yaw. Roll and pitch usually just ruin the texture placement. So yaw is just turning it around. So we can change it to between 0 and 360. 180. Why would you play with the rotation? It again helps breaking the monotony. Sometimes you have um, multiple layers and you just want to make things feel more dynamic. Um, just to show better example, I can do fields. So if we have farmlands and we want to make clusters of farms, sometimes we don't want all of them to be directed the same way. So we can take this and now do, for example, 60. And now we have farms that are a bit more randomized. Each going its own direction, and again helps breaking the monotony. It's especially important when you do bigger scenes, um, specifically town scenes, villages, stuff like that. Usually, when you do a battle map, going that deep into details is not as important because you know most of the time people are just going to be seeing 1,000 soldiers running and smacking heads. So it's not that big of a deal otherwise. All right, back to the texture. The next thing is size. Pretty self-explanatory. It's just changing the size of the texture. Play around based on your own preference. Shear. Just playing with the placement again. Nothing crazy. Position offset. Just moving the texture a bit. Um, Cases that this can be useful is stuff like this. We have roads. Sometimes I want the road to be just slightly to the right, slightly to the left. So I can play around with this. And lastly, we have the flora meshes. So for flora, we have two ways of doing them. So when I say flora, I mean trees, bushes, flowers, anything that grows, but not only. It's also pebbles, small rocks, and um, dead tree branches, whatever you want to place down in bulk could be done this way. And um, the two methods um, both have their uh, pluses and the good stuff and the bad stuff about them, and then we'll see that now. So before I get into the flora meshes with the terrain layers, I'm gonna look at the floras separately. So that's the next tab here. Let's make everything back into grass just to make it more visually pleasing. Okay. So it's grasslands, and grasslands need grass. Obviously, we can leave it this way, and it's a bit too flat. We want some wild grown grass, so we can go into the paint flora, type grass in here, and now we get all these types of grass that we can play around with. I like using the flora grass B, which as you can see it's yellow, but you can easily modify the values of the flora that you're placing down. structure here. I can change the size, and currently the size is set between 0.6 and 1.3. I can make it non-randomized. I can let it randomize between those two values, make it higher, lower, whatever I want. Same for rotation, not as important. What's important right now is playing with the color. So let's say I want this grass to be just green, and there we go. I can play around with it a bit more, maybe make it a bit darker, less vibrant, and there you go. We're getting some more types of grass. So this is sort of like precision placement. We can manually paint over whatever parts of land that we want. Um, I'm painting by left clicking, and I'm deleting by left clicking with Alt. Um, Another important thing to know is when you place down these floras, sometimes they place down too fast, and you can control that by changing the weight. So I change it to 0.1. Now it's a bit more controllable, but still a bit too randomized. So I put it downward like this, and I don't like the placement. I wanted it to be at the center, and it put two at the edges. So I can click space, and I can now manually move each one of those pieces of grass that I placed. I can rotate it, can scale it up, down, can do whatever I want with those. So with grasses, it's not as important. I can also delete it if I really want to. So I can select as many of them as I like and delete, or I can just delete with um, left click and Alt. It's usually not as important with grass. It's more if I take some kind of a tree. Let's do um, the flora tree high. Um, Also, notice that the tree is green. It's green because we changed the color multiplier here to green, and it can work okay with some stuff, but with some stuff it's gonna look bad. So we're gonna disable it for now and place a new one. There we go. Place a few more again. Switch with the space bar, and we can now move the trees. Awesome. All right. Um, this is a moment that I'm gonna take to ask if there's any questions so far. Anyone wants to say something? Go ahead. Awesome. Put a pin in this. I will cover it when we get to creating prefabs and using hidden entities. Okay, so when you see me getting to prefabs, just stop me and ask me again, okay? Awesome. Any other questions or? Okay, I'll take the silences a no. Okay, so um, I guess now we can go back to seeing, other than manual painting, we can do layer painting with Flora. So let's go and do something with those fields. Just before I do that, I can take the manual painting tool, and you'll see that I can do uh, so there's wheat. I'm gonna do instead of manually painting the wheat, I'm going to be placing it alongside the fields. So all of the fields that I will be making will automatically get their own um, associated flora that should be on there. So I go into the back into editing the material layer. I go to flora meshes, and under flora I can type wheat, and I will see wheat group summer. And now we have our flora over here. It's kind of sparse, and I can't manually move each and every piece around. But what we can do instead, we can edit the values that control how it spreads over the painted layer. So density, basically, the higher it is, the more it spawn. So let's do 40. And seed basically just randomizes the locations. Usually doesn't matter. We don't need to change the seed. Colony radius. It's again just playing around with the placement, the radius between each colony. So the game determines uh, a specific area. That's one colony. It's going to populate that area with a bunch of them, and then around it, there's going to be a bit of radius that has nothing, and then another colony and another colony. Usually, I turn it off to 0 because I don't like that. Colony threshold, um, the commonality, or how many of them, again, can turn it off. Um, the minimum and maximum size for the wheat. Let's keep them between 1 and 1 uh, and 1.2. So we have this nice wheat field. We can also play with the weight. The weight basically means, um, let's look at the circle for a moment. You see that there's two circles. There's the inner one and the outer one. So if I take um, hardness and I dial it down, the inner circle disappeared. And if I pick it back up, it's just getting closer and closer to the edges. It basically means uh, that the harder I click, the closer it gets to the edges. I'm gonna do it again, just with yeah. If you look again, you will see that it's slowly getting to the edges. But if I do higher hardness, it just immediately does everything at the same strength. So a softer placement means that it starts from the center and spreads out. Hard placement means that it does the entire circle evenly. Same thing goes with the flora. So it says weight, but it's more like hardness. The lower the weight is, the more central they will be placed according to the painted area, and the higher it would be, they would be sort of like flowing to the edges of the painted ground. So um, if I want a small road going in between fields, it may be a wiser idea keeping the weight below 0.5 just for better control. But you can go higher, especially if you make just open terrain. Um, Nothing stopping you there. All right. Um, we can continue adding more and more and more um, types of flora to any terrain layer. So let's do this for a moment just to see a bit more. Just doing some quick adjustments to make everything blend a bit nicer. So this is like a dry patch of grass, and we can blend them nicely, as you can see, sort of like create a bit of a variation, just breaking the monotony again. But I created this so I can show you just a bit more flora meshes that I'm blending. And you can type mix, and then you can get all of these mixed bundles of flora that you can use. So there's, let's do green, and then there's a flora green mix. Let's type 21, take the colony threshold to 0, and let's leave it at that. Let's add now grass B, change this to 40, radius 0. Let's make the grass smaller. Let's do a higher value. And change it to green. Let's make those bigger just so it's more noticeable. There we go. So we can continue adding more and more and more and just mix stuff until we get just bigger variation. Let's do, for example, dry mix. So on, so on. So when we create nature, we can make big swaths of um, land that automatically gets painted with the flora. Just wherever we paint, and this can save a ton of time. It can also help you cover up imperfections with your slopes or um, uneven ground, stuff that would look kind of bad, but you know, once it's covered with flora, it's not as noticeable. It's a good way to handle this kind of stuff. Usually, it's not always possible to get the best uh, slopes that you want. Sometimes they're too steep or stuff like that. All right. So we covered flora, and um, okay. Um, we will be moving to placing items, and that means also prefabs. So correct me if I'm wrong. Timber, you asked me, right? Okay, yeah, okay, good. I'm recognizing your voice. Um, okay, so you asked me about making trees that I can change their just the leaves. So the way to do that is either by creating new tree types and importing them into the mod and stuff, but this is a bit more intensive. It's also something that you would need people to do implementing, and someone like yourself was a 3D modeler and do stuff like that. A bit too much work for someone like me that doesn't know how to do 3D modeling. So what I do is I just search up one of the existing trees, um, and if they don't have the specific tree that I want here, I will show you another method in a moment. And then I see this, and that's a bummer. Why is the shadow looking like shit? If I take the same tree or the same tree type, and then the shadow looks more correct. So it basically means that there's something wrong with the material that they used for the leaves. But thankfully, we can change that for something that does work. I usually use the sycamore leaves instead, and now you can see that the shadow is correct. So you can just place down those entities, those prefabs of trees, and change the leaf texture individually. So we can do the summer version, the fall version. You want to do winter, there you go. Uh, Spring, whatever you need, you can use all of the vanilla options. If you want to go a step beyond, you can create material overrides and create your own textures in Photoshop or Painter or whatever program, third-party program that you want to use. That's a bit more advanced than today's topics, but it is possible. You can create more. Um, I'll leave it for another time. But this is a method you can use. Um, I'll dig deeper into it in a moment. Did I answer your question, Timber? Anything else you'd want to add so I just know if how can I answer it a bit better? Hmm. You can do that. Yes, you can do that. The problem is that not all materials work that way. So if I take the bark, I can change the color. But if I take the leaves, on the other hand, sadly I can't modify them. It has, yeah, has something to do with the shaders. So since we're already here, um, let's do metallic. It's gonna look weird now, a bit weird, but now I can change the colors. So yeah, you're correct. I did something like this in Winterfell when I did the weirwood tree in the Godswood. But this requires creating new material. This is just slightly more advanced. Something we can definitely cover later on. But yeah, it's certainly possible. It's certainly possible. Um, yeah. So moving this aside, I'm gonna get back to this once. Awesome, epic. Thank you, Timbor. Um, so I'm gonna get back to the tree when we're gonna do seasons, which we're gonna do very very soon. So prefabs and entities, and how do we do them? So we have the select entities and add entities tabs in addition to the slightly more advanced resource browser. I will get to the browser in a moment. For now, selecting entities basically lets you touch them and then you can move them. Um, Quick side note regarding keybinds. Let's place down an editor cube and work with that. So we're gonna do keybinds just to make life easier for all of you that are not familiar with them. So we have um, stuff like B, and now I'm moving my mouse right and left, basically for evenly scaling all the sides. I can do this with the B shortcut, or I can do this by um, clicking either Y or B, and that changes the axis to these small cubes, which you can pull to scale it up or down. Note that you can also edit the scale here by entering values. So B, we can scale up and down. Control Z or Control Z, just like any other program, it's reverting the last action you do. Undo, basically. Um, R for rotating. You can rotate with the axis, you can freely rotate, or again, edit the values here in the local transform. So we have B or Y, we have R for rotate, we have T for normal movement. Just like any program like Blender and stuff like that, we have the axis for movement. So if we choose one of the arrows, we can move only on that specific axis. So we can do just Y, just X, just Z. We can do two axes at the same time. So this I can be sliding on both the X and Y, or I can do both Y and Z, or X and Z. Now, a couple more important shortcuts that we can use. I just did this round thing to demonstrate it. So, when I hold this specific thing, I'm not moving it right now, I'm just directing my mouse at a different location on the screen. I can click and hold P, and now I'm not clicking anything on the mouse, I'm just moving it. And now it travels wherever I'm holding my mouse. The entity that I'm holding is going to be moving with me. And then I leave it and it stays there. Notice that it's always keeping the original orientation. So if it was like this, it would stay like this. If I change it to be in this weird position, it will remain in this position. This is P, but instead I can use I. I does the same thing, but it does not retain the original orientation. It changes the orientation based on the ground that it is snapping to. So, for example, if I have um, mild or mellow heel, sort of, and I want to make a camp, so I take a tent. Uh, so I take a tent. I can see that it's kind of floating, and I don't like it. So I can use I, and now it sort of snaps to the ground. And it's a bit better. It's still not perfect. You still most likely need to do a bit of modifying yourself. But it will help you get at least part of the way there. Sometimes it will do the entire work for you. Sometimes you need to still tinker a bit with it. Yeah, the only other shortcut that I put right now for movement is Z. Z is rotating on the Z, X for rotating on the X axis, and then for the Y axis, I'm using C. All right. let's look at some entities now. So, adding entities. We have a very long, extensive list of items that we can use. Um, this basically boils down to working with the editor, work and work and work and work and familiarize yourself. And at some point, just like you think about a word that you want to say in a language that you're learning or that you're new to, it may take you a moment, but then you'll be like, oh, I know, this is exactly what I need. Um, I'll show you an example. So I need to make a small palisade wall, right? So I can try and be intuitive. A palisade wall is made out of logs, so I can try and type log, and then I'll get a pretty decent selection of um, wooden logs with all sorts of textures that I can choose from. And you can go ahead and you can start building your palisade wall, and it may be, you know, kind of Obviously, um, you'd want to use multiple types of entities for variation, but let's say this is the beginner move. So log doesn't fit us that well. So let's think a step further. If not log, a palisade wall would be made out of stakes. So I type stake, and now we have more decent looking, refined stakes that if I can also pull them, I can even get the nice pointy end. And now again, I can create a longer palisade. I can also start doing a bit of rotating for variation, maybe a bit crookedness, just to make it feel more immersive. And the more you think here, the better you get. Um, Stretch some of them down, some of them up, and slowly but surely you get something that looks nicer. But this is still not that great. It's also using a lot of entities, and we don't necessarily want to use more entities than we have to. So we can either go ahead and use that one, or if we want to take this really a step further, what you can do is, like I said, once you're familiar with the what the editor offers, you know that you can go to the level 1 Vlandia walls, and you can take the merlons off of these walls by breaking the prefab and detaching the piece that you need. I can now create a palisade wall. It's also pointier, and it's only one entity that gives me quite a few of those stakes, and it looks, I think, at least, it looks a bit nicer than using the Batania stakes. Now, it's important to note that when you want to do stuff like this and you're editing existing prefabs, you need to be careful what you're doing and how you're doing it, because this is one of the most common ways to create game breaking errors that are going to crash your game, and you're going to be crying over why is it crashing, what did I do wrong. And that boils down to stuff like, oh no, I forgot to remove a destructible component script, and because it doesn't have a debris holder and it doesn't have um, the other things it needs, it's just gonna create problems. So remember, if I am breaking prefabs, if I'm using entities that were part of something else, always check if it has tags and scripts. This one doesn't have tags. Generally speaking, tags are not as important as scripts when it comes down to removing them, but it's always better to not have tags if you don't need them there. So yeah, it's a script. It's a bad script. It's going to cause a crash in this case. So I'm selecting all of these three entities that I copied and I'm removing it from. And now this is safe to use. Um, I'm just going to go again to breaking the prefab. So I took this wall, put it down, um, and I can go now to inspector, and here I can see the values for this specific entity, specific prefab, modify it, the values, the visibility, the name, scripts, anything that I need here. But we want to go into scene. And scene, this is where we see the list of the full list of all entities that are placed down in our scene. Some are going to be connected to a parent entity. For example, this is already prefabbed with a parent. So we have this European castle corner. Underneath it, we have the actual castle corner. The top one is just an empty entity. Just to see what an empty entity is, there's a button here, add empty entity. It's just a dot. There is nothing special about it. There's no scripts, no tags, no physics, no visibility parameters, nothing. This is absolutely an empty entity, and we can use that to make our life easier or create new things that are not existing. Um, so we were looking at this entity and we saw that there's the empty entity as a parent. So we can move this and we can see that the parent is not really tied to anything physical. Just to show you how it comes in handy. So if I take this and I see that the center point for this model is quite inconvenient. Now, if I want to move it around, it's going to be, oh, it's on the ground and need to move it, and then I want to rotate it around and it's not rotating around the center point. Inconvenience means work takes more time. It means I get angry. It means I get frustrated. I'm not having fun. And if you're not having fun, maybe you shouldn't bother working on making Bannerlord mods. So we take our empty entity and we, in this case, we want this to be exactly at ground height. I wanted it to be in a way that these two lower parts are hidden on the ground. So our actual model only starts from this point. So I'm going to snap this to the ground with P. And I'm going to put it here at the corner, though I can also move it to the center. But it's not as important. So I'm going to put it here in the corner. And I'm going to take this entity, the Melon 4. I'm going to rename it just to make things easier for me. I'm going to make it Palisade A. And now I'm going to pull this into the empty entity and call the empty entity Palisade custom A. Now, when I want to move the Palisade around, it's sticking very comfortably to the ground the way I wanted it. And it's also rotating in a way that's very convenient for me because Now, let's say I want to make a wall with this. I can start duplicating by doing a shift click pull on an axis. So shift click pull, shift click pull. And the reason I chose to put the empty entity at that specific point is because it allows me this easy curving that I can do with the fences. So I can create a more organic rounded points with fair ease instead of what I had before where I have to do like this and then move stuff around and then it's not convenient because I need to move the camera around a lot. So yeah, if you lazy out in the moment, you're gonna work harder in the long term. Be smart and save yourself the hard work. Don't don't lazy out early on. It's just gonna be like a boomerang. It's gonna come back to you later. Um, so yeah, so now we understand the idea of a parent entity. So I'm gonna go back to this. So we have a prefab. We want to break it from the parent entity. We can break it by duplicating an entity from within, deleting an entity from within, or directly going to the parent entity, right clicking, and then we can detach from parent. No, we're going to do break prefab. Notice that there is this square symbol with a crack on it. I'm going to put this again here. So we have this one. And another one. And I'm going to break the new one we put, break prefab. And now we can see that there is a solid prefab and a broken prefab. Broken prefab means that we can modify it, change stuff around, and it will remain that way. A solid prefab in its complete form is saved to a local file. For example, if I type tent again and go back to the old files, you'll see I have a selection of tents here that Swan created. So they already come with a few items inside. If I was to take this prefab, remove parts from it, and now it's broken. If I was to go ahead and save it again under the same module, it will suggest that I save it under the same object because it has the same name. If I save it now, it modifies this prefab, which basically means that across all of my scenes, across all of the scenes of that mod, anyone that used this specific prefab will get the change that I created. So what this means, if I've created a scene a month ago, finished, published, it's in the mod, people can go and play it. And then the next day, Haterade created a new scene. He took one of my prefabs, didn't tell anyone, but he modified it, changed it, saved it over the existing prefab. Now, in the next version he's going to publish, people are going to enter my map, my scene, and it's going to look different because he changed the reference that the editor is using. When I have a saved prefab, the data for this prefab is saved locally in the prefabs folder, in these files. And when a prefab is broken, it's saved directly into the scene, just like any other entity that I'm placing down. So, rule of thumb, if you're using prefabs and you want to modify them, don't save them over. Um, unless you save them with a new name. Um, prefabs. Um, break them only if necessary, because it's smarter to keep prefabs in their solid form. It's easier for the engine to work that way. I don't know exactly why. I guess it does less computing. Um, but yeah, when you have very big scenes with a lot of entities in them, sometimes having a lot of them bundled together under a prefab that you save can make or break your scene. It can make a scene that's crashing with no reason stop crashing. Um, Swan can attest to that. We faced that multiple times in the past. Um, okay, what else about prefabs? Um, so breaking and creating prefabs. Um, just as I showed you before, you create a. Usually, I like when I create prefabs, I like having an empty entity as the top entity, the parent entity basically, and I attach stuff to it. Why do I do it this way? Um, Usually, when you create a prefab, um, it's obviously made of multiple items. So if I take this for example, I'll detach the palisade. So let's say I'm making a Rohan style um, wall, just something simple that I'm gonna make fairly quickly. Um, so I'm taking this small bazaar wall. And let's do something like this. And just the final thing would be just a quick example of how creating prefabs can be extremely powerful. And this is also what we call kit bashing, when you take existing kit pieces and create something completely new out of them. Um, all right, so we have this that I created very quickly. So we have this small wall that can be used for I don't know. Let's bring Adam just to see the scale. So this could be used for a small settlement of some kind. Um, but notice that all of these items, most of these items, if not all of them, have modified values. For example, the x here is not 1, it's 1.04. This has a height of 1.84. Stuff is modified. So it's good to use a parent entity that is set to 1 by 1 by 1 because it just helps us, again, stay organized, I guess. And it also helps if you save the prefab, you want to stick to a uniform size. So that way you can keep track of what size things are meant to be. So again, I have my entity. I have all of these new stuff that I added. I don't need the atom though. And I am adding it to my parent entity. And now I can just create more of these walls quite easily. Start walling up a town. Prefabs are pretty powerful. Definitely worth creating your own if you have the patience, or if you have ideas that you want to realize and don't necessarily have the entities to realize them with. So yeah, this is just a quick example for that. Uh, I am not going to go deeper into those castle walls because this is not important for us right now. Okay, so prefabs. Do we have any more questions regarding how we create them, break them, save them? I'll show how we save a prefab actually. We give it a special name, and then we can save as. We always save to our module. We never save into native folders. No story mode, sandbox, custom battle, none of those. We save into our module. If we happen to accidentally save into a native one, it's not a huge deal. You'll just have to manually go and grab it from there. So we go to modules, we go, for example, if we saved something into sandbox by accident, we go into prefabs here, and we're going to pick it up from here and take it into our own module. So we'll just cut and paste into our own prefabs folder. But yeah, so I have this Palisade Custom A. I'm saving into the Lord of the Rings map module. You can save the scale, rotation, position. Those specifically pertain to these. I don't like enabling any of those unless I'm blazing out, and then I usually enable just scale. But if we work the way I showed you and I keep the parent entity at 1 by 1 by 1, you don't need to save the scale. This is pretty good as it is. Now we want to save to a new file. And since it's a new file, we need to give that new file a name. So I'm going to call this one tutorial prefabs and save it. Now that I saved it, I have my Palisade, and it's in solid form. It's not broken anymore. And I can now also go here and type Palisade and bring it back at any time, my convenience, and just create more of those. Now let's say I created more of those modules for the same kind of thing that I'm making. Let's say I created a tower, I created a gatehouse, I created whatever, but it's all for this exact style. So let's quickly, for the sake of the tutorial, make gate. I'm not even going to put much effort into it. I'm just going to make something quick. Um, all right. So I created my custom gate. I'll call it Palisade custom gate. And I'll save it again to the uh, correct module. And now I'm not going to save it to a new file. I'm going to save it to the same file. And I do that to minimize bloat. We don't need to have 1 million prefab files in our folders. Um, there is a reason why I usually don't create bundles like this, but creating bundles like this also helps with order and helps with the bloat that we don't need. So I'm saving it to the same file. And now also, if I want to go browsing and look for the entities that I'm creating, for the prefabs that I'm making, I can go again to the add entities, to the prefabs list. I can go change all modules to Lord of the Rings map. And then under Lord of the Rings map, I can see all of the prefab files that I have. And this is the new one that I made, tutorial prefabs.xml. And now I have my palisade. It doesn't show the wall, the gate, but it's already saved there. If I was to close the program and open again, it's gonna appear there. So yeah, every new entity that you're saving into an existing prefab XML is saved, but you'll need to restart the editor to access it again. Yeah, okay. Any questions about creating these prefabs? Okay, awesome. Next, um, we have to do hidden entities. Now, once you're gonna start working with the editor, once you're gonna start creating your own scenes, um, you will realize that the entity browser, the prefabs, don't have all of the solutions for you. There, simply, there are some models that you're going to be looking for and they're not existent. So if I type trebuchet, the only reason I already have all of these here is because I bothered putting them here. And as you can see, it's even animated because I bothered using them with an animation. I actually took them from Story originally when I learned how to do them. Something that I recommend that all of you do is when you want to learn something new, you should go and try to reverse engineer it yourself. The way I learned how to use the skinned mesh viewer script is by accessing the prefabs that Snorri made over a year ago, and that way I found how to use animation. So I saw that he's using an animation, and that way when I started exploring the resource browser, which is what we're gonna do right now anyway, um, I knew that I can start copying names, and that way I can start exploring. So in this case, I would be copying the animation name, but it's not what we're doing right now. We don't care about animation. We care about uh, entities. So we already have trebuchets saved here, um, which is all fine and dandy. But let's get a catapult. So the game calls catapults mangonels. Mangonel. So just to recap, I opened the resource browser, and while I'm in the native module, this is the list of the modules that I have opened right now in the editor. I have the native and sandbox will always be open, and I have the Lord of the Rings map. Um, so 95% of the stuff that you need is in native. So I'm going to be working inside of native, and I'm going to use the search tool, and I'm looking for Mangonel. So this is going to find all of the entities that have the name Mangonel in them. This means uh, animation clips. It means physics shapes. It means uh, everything, basically everything. So let's take this destroyed Mangonel for an example. So I'm making a siege setup, or maybe a battle map that has um, like battlefield remnants. It's an area constantly goes through battles, and you just want to make it very apparent. So you leave all these vacant siege camps and siege equipment and stuff, and that way um, can sort of imitate um, frequent battles that happened there, and no one even had the time to um, go there and salvage everything back. So we have this broken catapult just for that as an example. When we get entities from the resource browser, we can get stuff, like I said, that we cannot find here. So if I type Mangonel, I can find the Mangonel spawners, which are used for as functions for scenes. That means um, that those are basically the spawners. So in a siege setup, you can choose I want to place a mangonel or a catapult, a ballista or a trebuchet. Um, this is part of that mechanic. But if you would just want to play something cosmetic, this is not good for us. This is it has scripts and stuff, and that causes problems unless it's used in its specific um, designated use. Right. So we don't have the mangonel here, so we managed to find it manually ourselves in the native module. We can try to be creative and look up anything really. Trying to think quickly. Let's do Lord. We keep. just as an example, this is a model of a keep that wasn't used in the vanilla game. They created it, but they didn't use it. Although this one is specifically is found in the prefab browser, but this one is not. This one is one of the hidden entities that we have. So you can find a lot of cool stuff if you bother looking for them. Um, there's plenty of items that are just hiding in the files, waiting for you to um, utilize them. Probably some of those things, yeah. Yeah, they have some remnants of I guess warbands as well. There is, for example, ship. I don't know if this was meant to be part of the war sales stuff or um, I don't know, but this already physics shapes for ships exist in the game files forever. So no, we do have ships in the game, but not these. Yeah, we have some this is also there's the map icon ship. If you're talking about vanilla, you may have seen this in some of the scenes, scaled up far away. Um, and obviously we have the uh, classic ones. But yeah, there's also yeah, kind of a classic long ship. Yeah, it appears in plenty. All of the coastal cities that have a port got those, and um, yeah. Anyway, so we know how to find hidden entities now. We know that we can sneakily open the resource browser and we can type stuff and we might discover things hidden. So let's actually take something that's not hidden. Let's actually take this ship because it fits what I'm trying to cover right now. So we have this ship. I brought it through the resource browser, and I'm gonna bring the same ship over here. They're virtually identical with a tiny difference. The ship that I got through the prefabs tab, through the identities feature, it comes with a physics shape already applied to it. On the other hand, the one I got from the resource browser does not. And that basically goes all across the board for everything you bring through the resource browser. Um, none of the items you bring through there comes with a physics shape. And the physics shape is important because no physics shape means that there's no collision settings. It means you can just walk through stuff. So if there's a wall without the collision shape, without a physics shape, you can just ghost your way through it, and yeah, pretty much that's not good for us. So what do? We open the physics tab, and based on the name of our meta mesh, which is ship A, I type ship A, and there's the physics shape, which as you can see is the correct one. I can also apply different physics shapes but obviously they are not really useful to us. Another thing we should know about physics shapes, notice that they have all sorts of colors. For example, this one is a good one because it has three of them. Each color represents a different material. So there's wood, there's stone. I think this is fabric. This is metal. So each one of those that we heat will sound differently, will make a different particle effect. So with that being said, if I take back the ship one, they in Tellworld's usual fashion overlooked the correct material for the boat, which is obviously supposed to be wood, but they left it with the invalid material because I guess they're invalids over there. Um, so if I'm changing it to wood manually in the physics override material, it now automatically changes it with the color as well to the color that it's supposed to be. So it's important. You use items, you modify their physics, you modify their materials, it goes hand in hand. So, just as an example, if I take one of these wooden floor modules, I want to use it as a wall. I want to use, let's do Empire brick. So now instead of a wooden wall, it's this red brick wall, but the material is still wooden. So that's not good for us. So what we're gonna do is go back into the physics materials, override, and set it to stone. It's important to remember to do this. Um, I mean, it's not super important, I guess. To me, it is. Um, if I go into a Lord's Hall or a town and I'm chilled and I'm exploring and suddenly I walk on something that looks like wood and I hear metallic sounds, or I uh, hit something with my swords and it's stone and I hear wooden sounds, it annoys me. And that's me personally. I know probably most players don't care, but it's something that you should consider if you're working and you do care. Please take the extra moment and do this yourself as well. Um, okay, okay. So physics covered, hidden entities covered. Um, just a quick explanation of what metameshes is. Um, since we explored going into the resource browser, another method to do what we did is we can place an empty entity. With that empty entity selected, I can click on Add MetaMesh, and I can type sheep A, and I can edit. And this is now identical to the other ships that I have. Same, same three things, uh, three different methods to do it. Actually, I'm gonna bring back one of those ships because I'm gonna show you a bit of scripting in a moment. Okay. let's focus again on the wall. Just to talk about material swapping and texture swapping. So we have this ugly Vlandia room, and sometimes a couple of clicks can make such a huge difference with your scenes. You can take something like this, which is vanilla, or you know what? Let's take something that's actually that you're familiar with from vanilla. Let's take Tavern. Let's take this one. So we have this basic Empire Tavern building, and we're making a total conversion mod. And sometimes we don't have the funding or um enough interest in creating something completely new. But we do have new textures, so might as well make the best out of it and sort of make something new out of something old. So we can take this instead of commissioning new stuff or modularly building something. We can just take this vanilla tavern and start changing the materials. So we can start with the walls, and let's do Gondor, and let's start using Gondor bricks. Maybe not this one, maybe something smaller. Okay, let's use this one. And I don't like this. I don't like this grime that I see on the walls, but I'll get to that in a moment. Let's see. Let's get these changed for Condor as well. Condor. Let's do another type of bricks, and you get the idea. Basically, how fast we can completely transform uh, vanilla assets. Well, obviously, there's some wonky stuff, but you can always um, either cover up things that look bad, or just revert and try other methods to make them work. So yeah, we have material swaps this way. The last thing you should know about material swaps, aside from just going directly in, typing something, putting something else, and again, you will familiarize yourself with the engine and with what it offers, and that way you'll know what you can use to change stuff. One of the most powerful things you can do using material swaps is using something called editor gizmo. So, for example, I have this ugly grime. I can swap it out for gizmo and use the editor gizmo, and now it's invisible. Why is this so powerful? I can, uh, for example, take Sturgia bed. I can take one of those Sturgia beds, and I can go and remove all of the materials and repeat the process all across, just so it stays this way no matter how far you go, all across the LOD. LODs. And now I have this. And lastly, I need to get rid of the physics. And now I have these nice columns with their nice design that I can play around with uh, for whatever I want to do. It's just a useful way of creating something out of something else, um, because these columns don't exist in any other form. It's either part of the bed or non-existent. Now I remove their physics, and that means that I need to compensate somehow. So I can take an entity that has physics, and if it has physics like the editor cube, I also have very, very strong control over it because it's uh, a very basic shape that I can very easily play around with the dimensions. So I'm going to fit it here and here and change the material to wood. And now change this to gizmo as well. And I attach it back to the Sturgia bed. Now I have these two pillars with their physics enabled, and only the pillars have physics. And just to see that it works, when I'm trying to place a new entity, you can see that it's snapping to the physics that I assigned to those pillars. And if I'll duplicate this and get rid of the editor cubes that I've used just for the physics, you can see that there's a big difference. So this is how powerful a tool is. Swapping materials, using the editor gizmo, and playing with the physics can be. This is just a showcase of what you can do just with a tiny bit of imagination and a lot of patience. Um, so yeah, this is just two pillars, but you can take it as far as creating incredibly detailed gatehouses or uh, unique interiors. Possibilities are endless. You're basically a mini 3D modeler or a Lego master builder, if you will, within the confines of the modding tools. Questions? Awesome. Okay. Um, let's quickly introduce you to the check problems feature. So there's this button here. It's check for problems, which is pretty straightforward. It basically means that the editor will try to find any quick errors as it can. It does not mean that it finds all of the errors. It will find only fundamental things that may cause problems. It will not know if you forgot to include a feature that is needed to make a scene work. It will just know and tell you if there's well, you will see. Let's click. All right, so it sees only two problems because this is a pretty much an empty scene. There's almost nothing in here. Um, So one of the errors it discovered is that the scene has no soft borders. So we can just place them down. Um, I'm not putting any effort into this, but just to explain what soft borders means. All of you played Bannerlord, all of you know this. When you go on a scene towards the edges, suddenly there's like this red screen, and if you pass through it, you have um, 10 seconds to turn back, or you get booted out of the scene. This is the soft border. Basically, is like the initiates the timer. It will not stop you from going outside, but it will encourage you to either go back or it will boot you out. Um, every scene needs to have this, even if it's not necessary. Even if your scene is an interior and you cannot get even to the soft borders, you still make them just because the engine requests that you put it in. And um, in cases that it does need to be there, simply it needs to be there because functions. And you will see that the problem check for problems feature tells you that this may cause Synflora not to appear in the mission. Just a side effect, but still take into consideration. The next one is entity with physics shapes do not support non-orthogonal frames. I created this deliberately. What I did is I took two entities and when you take an entity, you can use the axis to stretch it around. But what if I want to take this item and turn this shape into a diamond shape instead of just a square? So I can choose both of them, and then I can stretch both of them along the uh, y-axis, and this sort of morphs this entity. But let's call this an illegal technique because you'll see that if I try to move it around now, it automatically snaps back. I'll do Control Z, and now it's this way. If I want to move this in its morphed form, I have to select this alongside another entity. Otherwise, it fixes itself. What's important to note is that this also upsets the editor, and it tells you that the editor does not support non-orthogonal frames, yada yada yada. Um, when you build scenes, it's inevitable. It's always going to happen. You're always going to get this error. Is it important? No, you can ignore it 99% of the time because 99% of the time, what you have is um, you make some prefab, okay, and the editor is annoying. So sometimes one of your entities is going to be like uh, this. You see, I just turned it zero point 0.1, and I'm going to turn this zero point 0.1 to the other side, and even sometimes it just does like this 0.02. And if I were to put an empty entity now, and I'm going to bundle all of these into the empty entity, and I'll be stretching it, and I'll be checking for problems again. This wasn't harsh enough for it to realize. But yeah, but now it should recognize another one of those. So yeah, sometimes it just expect everything. Expect the unexpected. Things will happen. Things that are not necessarily fun. Those errors, some of them are ignorable, some of them are important, and you need to fix them. Um, this is just a case of uh, this is a problem you can ignore. The problem um, with the soft border is non-ignorable. You have to have that. Let's do okay. Uh, we're not gonna do everything that I put on the agenda. Um, so let's decide together what we want. I can show you particles and scripts. Um, or we can do nav mashing. Is there a preference? We can do either nav mashing or we can look into particles, um, paths, sounds. Uh, we're gonna do another session. The thing is, it's 17 past 11, and I do want to go to sleep soon. Um, no, you need to understand something. I wake up every day at 5 a.m. No, you're correct. Sleep is for the weak, but I have to sleep. I am weak. Okay, so nav mashing. I think that's what the majority wants, right? It's you know what? It doesn't matter what the majority wants. It's what they're getting right now. Um, okay. I guess I will. Okay, so nav mashing. Nav mashing is chill. Okay, you will hear some people complaining, and you will hear some people telling you it's the most horrible thing ever. But bottom line, it's just one of those jobs where you turn off your brain, put on some nice music, and just go with the flow. I don't know what's your jam, but you can do like George Michael or Lionel Richie or whatever puts you in a sexy mood, and just start nav mashing. Now, how do we nav mash? Uh, uh, you turn off your brain and you do it because you need to. And yeah, it was Timber. I wanna agree with Timber, but I'll have to admit that I have no idea what he said. I have no idea what's the thing with the thing in the blender, because no. retracing, but the idea is um, everything has physics. So you, the player, you have a brain. You know where you can go and where you can't go. But guess what? The NPCs don't know, so we need to tell them where they can go. And that is NavMesh. It basically is the navigation data that um, the NPCs, which includes animals as well, need in order to be moving around. So let's get to it. Navigation mesh, it's up here. You have vertices, edges, and faces. You can swap between them by clicking 1, 2, and 3. When you are on 3 or the face setting, you can change the IDs. ID can be anything between 0 and this number. But we don't need to worry about crazy numbers. Usually, unless you make something like a siege where there's some mechanics to do with nav mashing, usually you work with only 2, 3 nav mashing IDs. Um, okay, so how do we nav mesh? We can start by opening the generation tool tab, the selection tab, and the scene level visibility tab. Okay, quick move to levels because that's important. Um, when we make scenes like sieges, we need to have levels, which are level 1, level 2, level 3, civilian, and siege. Basically, what this means, just quickest I can make this. In the visibility parameters, we can make certain things appear only in certain levels. So if you want these two to only appear in the siege, I changed their visibility values to not appear in base, because base means it appears in all of the layers, and civilian, so it doesn't appear in civilian. And then I go to visibility, and now I can turn on siege and level 1. It's here. Now I turn on civilian, and it's gone. So same thing goes for nav mesh. So we have our visibility layers. Uh, when you do sieges and you do villages, you will have different nav mesh IDs because they mean different stuff, and that means that for the siege, you will need a certain set of nav mesh with a certain set of IDs, and for the civilian scene, you will need a different set with a different list of IDs. Just to quickly show you, if I go to Bannerlord missions and I look at village for a moment, you will see that this is how a normal civilian scene would look like with navmesh, which is the pink being the paths that the humans know to follow. AI humans will follow the pink, and there's a script that tells humans to stick to ID X and animals to avoid ID X. So that's why we do the IDs. In addition to this, we have the siege, and then in the siege, we have more complex stuff, as you can see, with many IDs, with broken walls and solid walls, and ladders and gates, and there's a lot of those. So we're gonna leave that. not important. Um, but yeah, IDs are important, and the layers that they appear in uh, really do matter a lot. Um, I'm gonna take the opportunity. So for the case of Isengard, this is the way it looks on the civilian mode. There is absolutely no problem with leaving areas without nav mesh, unlike the world map, but not important. We're not talking about the world map. You can leave areas without nav mesh. It basically means that no one will be walking here. Um, white is my roads. Pink is anything but the roads. This basically tells me where civilians and guards will be walking. Now, if I swap to the siege mode, you'll see that it looks very differently. There is white for defenders, there is blue for attackers, which is 1 and 0. And then there's the whole mechanic stuff with the broken walls and the mechanic for going over the debris and stuff, and siege ladders. And that has to do with IDs and visibility layers. Now let's get to the practical stuff. How do we create navmesh? How do we place down navmesh? So we go to the navmesh tab. We open the level visibility selection generation tools. And now I can click the spacebar, and you see that there is now a small green ball here. And I can just start clicking 1, 2, 3, and there we go. I have my first triangle. 1, 2, and now I have my first rectangle. And this is how I'm creating navigation faces. How do I connect them? So I create at least 3 connection points. 1, 2, 3. And then Shift allows me to connect them. And when I do Shift, I click and it's connected. Another way is placing all these dots, and sometimes you're gonna get some problematic connections that you're kind of struggling with, and the way to do it is you click the spacebar again, and now we're back at the selection. We can select manually and fill, and select manually and fill. Pretty simple. Um, Sometimes you will see that no matter what you do, and I'm clicking a lot, I can't select anything. This is because I clicked H. H is hide. Hide is hiding stuff like all of those uh, helper icons that you can see. When I do that, I cannot select navmesh. So just note, don't get frustrated if you see that you can't select navmesh. It's not because you're bugged out or something. It basically means that you are hiding stuff, and that's why you can't select navmesh. sometimes you want to click and create this, but then, oops, I created this instead. So you can select it, delete, try again. Um, it is overall really, really pretty simple. Um, let's say you have areas, or it happens to me often with towers and stuff like that, because they have some more intricate uh, nav mesh requirements. So if I take, ew, I don't like the tiny. Let's take Hollandia. Um, so one of the most annoying things to nav mesh is the round stairs. They require quite a bit of patience, and you need to remember that the AI is extremely stupid. But just so you can see, that's how nav meshing works. And you need to take into consideration that there's also twists and turns. So I made sure to line up my nav mesh in a way that I can extend here. And there we go. Annoying placement that doesn't connect well with what I want. So you can either try to play around, or you can just do what I showed you before and select and fill manually. And you can see it can get annoying, so you can just do it this way. Another thing you can do, I'm selecting edges, and I can do extrude. Extrude basically copies the edge and is keeping it connected with the rest of the faces that I put so far. Okay, so this is just so you can see a bit more complex setup for NavMesh. Now, I chose to do this so I can show you that sometimes we can work smarter than harder. And if we select all of the faces that we need, we can just do copy selected faces, paste selected faces. Now I can fit them into all of the other towers that are using the same model. So again, instead of working hard, work smart. Um, so again, copy and paste. I already have it copied, so I can just keep pasting more and more of those. Um, so when we did King's Landing for Dance of Dragons, um, I created one tower, nav meshed it, and then created all of the other towers and just copied the nav mesh across all of them. And all I need to do at the end is just connect the doors to the walls and what's between them. Everything that was more complex or difficult was already done once and just copy pasted. Um, so yeah, this is one of the more important things that you can that you should do with the nav mashing. There is one more thing to show you aside for the visibility layers again. Like I showed you before, you can change the layer visibility. Um, since we already have on this map a few navmesh IDs, I'm gonna do ID face ID 2. Select faces. That's why we open this selection, right? So I set face ID to 2 and select faces with ID. And now it automatically selected all the faces with ID 2. So now, if I really wanted to, I can move all of them in one go. If I knew where the arrows were, but yeah, I can select um, all of those in one go. I can select all of one. I can select all of the face IDs in this layer. I can I can select anything that's higher or lower than a specific height. Again, it's worth taking a moment to observe the tools and try them out. Trial and error is one of the best ways to learn. Um, so yeah, this leaves one final thing for us with nav mashing. Spawners are very important, and they don't work without nav mesh, at least not correctly. And you need to make sure that the spawners are inside of nav meshed areas. And it's also important that you note that another quotation. This is good because it's encompassing the entire the entire spawner. This is good because it's encompassing the entire spawner. This is not good. This is borderline okay. If it was just like this, not working. Like this, working but sketchy. It might not work. You just need to make sure that the absolute center point of the spawner is on nav mesh. You also need to make sure that you're not clipping your nav mesh into solid entities. Otherwise, stupid AI will just walk into it. Although, thankfully, when we have trees, floras, stuff like that, that was generated with the terrain paint layer or with the paint flora, I can in fact um, navmesh through it freely because the game creates tiny capsules inside those three entities. It does it automatically. So the AI goes on here and he sees there's a capsule that sort of disrupts the nav mesh, so it knows to go around the tree and not into the tree. With normally placed entities, with traditional entities, it doesn't happen. So you have to um, be mindful and not clip your nav mesh with the actual entity itself. Um, yeah, the only thing you need to see is I can select multiple. Selecting multiple, I click and control, and then I can change IDs by changing up here, changing the values. So yeah, I think that's pretty much it. We covered uh, about 75% of what I wanted to cover. So I think we did pretty good. Anyone got questions about Navmesh? Okay, let's do it like this. We have until midnight for whatever you guys want. Okay, so if you wanna show me something, get input, whatever, let's dedicate it this next few minutes for that.